today we have Rod Hill on the phone with us from E-Cashflow Services. We've actually had eCashflow services in the marketplace for a little while now. It's a fantastic product. eCashflow was, like I mentioned, was brought on a while ago, so we've done a lot of changes. We, being Agora, has done a lot of changes to the marketplace since we've been in partnership with eCashflow. eCashflow was probably one of the first companies that we started working with back in the, I'll say, old days, numerous years ago, and really phenomenal service. Rod's a fantastic person, very, very intelligent in this space, and we just felt that we needed to get Rod back on the phone and really present eCashflow and make a video, a call. That was actually one thing that we didn't have in the marketplace in eCashflow, was a Monday call, so that's something that we had started doing after eCashflow. So we wanted to, all in all, get eCashflow kind of up to speed and remodeled, if you will, in the marketplace. And we've done that over the last week or so between Rod and I, and some of his employees as well have been pitching in. And we've been getting everything revamped and back up to speed. So as I mentioned, we have Rod on the phone, and I would like at this time to hand it on over to Rod, and he can tell you a little bit about his personal history as well as the company history with eCashflow, and then from there we'll dive on into the service itself and get it going. So Rod, I'll go ahead and let you take over now. The floor is yours. Welcome to the call. Glad you're here today.
Thank you, Jeremy. Well, thanks for everyone joining us this afternoon. I always enjoy talking about eCashflow. It's been around now for closing in on 20 years, started in 1999. And I'll just give you a really, really brief history of how we got started, because I think it's a little bit interesting anyway. I had been in the woodworking industry for a number of years, working for a big company, running plants for a big company, running sales organizations for a big company called Masonite Corporation many years ago. Anyway, I came to Denver to run a wood window manufacturing plant. The wood window industry turned to vinyl, and I sold the business and decided I needed to do something else. I bought my first computer in 1998, and I started eCashflow in 99 when I recognized that the future was going to be online for me. So let me just quickly tell you what happened in 1999 to make it all possible. The National Automated Clearinghouse Association, the one that makes all the rules for checks and ACH accounts, they decided that the industry was in dire straits because 2 million checks were bouncing every day in the United States. So they put into effect some rules that would allow a third-party company start up just to help merchants with this epidemic of bounced checks. And so I really liked the idea, because it was something brand new to hit the marketplace with and make something out of it. So I did. Me and about 500 other companies started up in 1999, 2000 to do what eCashflow does today in a very basic way. We recovered bounced checks in 1999 until about 2002 when we added the recovery of bounced ACH payments. And all of those were recurring payments except for the checks. So as you might imagine, when 500 people jump in the marketplace all at one time, the industry gets covered up, if you will, and only the people that are successful will stay in the business. So from 2006 to 2010, we started acquiring competitors until we got 6 of them. And the rest of them, to my knowledge, are all but gone. Some of them have been absorbed by other companies, as I understand it. But in the big picture, when we added the recovery of debit and credit card payments that bounce in 2010, we're the only company that I know that can recover any type of bounced payment where it's an NSF, meaning there's non-sufficient funds available to cover the payment. So in 1999, we started in the check industry first. And then in 2001, when 9/11's disaster took place, all the checks in the United States were sitting on planes across the country for 3 days. So a year later, President Bush signed a law that allowed banks to transmit checks electronically between themselves with images. And that's when we added the recovery of ACH transactions, because it was a good timing, if you will. So we now have all of these services, all related to the recovery of bounced payments, most of which what we do today are recurring payments, which means membership organizations, subscriptions, utilities, anybody that bills the same people over and over, month after month. It's been a really important business for a lot of people. We're in a lot of different industries. We're just about anything you can think of, from telecom to utility to retail to subscription to membership organizations. And I might add that one of the reasons that we've been so successful is we had a couple people early that called on the right customers, developed a lot of business, and they're doing quite well today from a commission standpoint, but they really helped eCashflow get a good start. For example, 2001, we started with our first YMCA, and today we serve over 2,500 YMCAs. So that's kind of an exclusive industry. The guy that started it, it's all his. We don't let anybody else call in the YMCAs for a good reason. They've developed it. It's their business. And that's the only one that I can say that is off limits. So there are tons and tons of businesses that have never even heard of our services, but we have some pretty large customers. We have a lot of really small and medium-sized customers. We've got somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 customers today, most of which have been with us for more than a year. Many customers have been with us for numerous years. We have a reputation of 96% of all the customers that have been working with us are still with us today, if they're still in business or they haven't been absorbed by a bigger company. So in the big picture, our business is one that we solve a major problem for businesses, and that problem is collecting their bounced payments, NSF payments, if you will, and we do it very effectively and efficiently in a 7 to 21 day period. We get up to 2 representments in all of the different products that we offer, so that we get a high rate of recovery, which could be as much as 80% in the business-to-business industry, where we handle big companies that do wholesale distribution to smaller companies, smaller businesses like mom and pop grocery stores and convenience stores and grocery stores and liquor stores. All those people get their products from large distributors, and those are business-to-business accounts, and they almost entirely pay by check. And as you might think about it, small businesses, sure enough, they have issues with their bank accounts, just like consumers do. You know, they have cash flow issues that affect their payments as they send them out, and so they bounce. And we have even a higher rate of recovery for business to business, up to 90%, if you will. And we've got some pretty good sized people. We've got some bottling companies like Dr. Pepper and 7-Up and some of those types of people. And we have large retail chains of business. You know, I'm not highly recommending small accounts like mom and pop grocery stores are good accounts, but small companies like a shoe store wouldn't be a good account. I wouldn't waste my time going in there to get 1 check a month or whatever they might have. But in the big picture, the size of the account doesn't matter to us. We can handle any size customer, from 1 check to or 1 bounced debit or credit card to thousands, and we do that today. So essentially, our system is very simple to sign up for, as you're going to find out here in a minute. We've got it set up so you guys can do it online, submit the application, which is very simple to do. All the setup then is done by eCashflow. We contact the customer. We set up a reporting system with the customer. We set up a website for them so that they can see the transactions that we're recovering. And then, of course, the basic part of our product is it's all free for our customer. Our customer doesn't have to pay us to set up. They don't buy any equipment. They don't pay per transaction. They don't pay for anything. Basically, we do it all for free for the merchant, and we give them 100% of the item at balance. So if it's a check for $100, we collect $100, we give them $100 at no cost. So those are the key points that I wanted to make sure that we got up front to you guys. And then I thought it might be interesting for you to know that back in 2000, a company came through Colorado advertising that they had this brand new service that they could provide, and you could come to their seminar, they would sign you up, and you could go out and sell a recovery service sort of like ours, and you could also do credit card processing, and you could print checks for customers, and it only cost $35,000 to get a license. So I went and I saw it, and I couldn't believe it with my own eyes, but there were people that signed up for this thing, and I got to know some of them, and I can honestly say that obviously the company was not interested in how many customers they brought in. They were interested in the big pot of gold at the beginning of the sale. But anyway, what it did, it gave me an idea, and I sold 9 licenses for eCashflow from 2002 to 2005. And all of those people paid $3,750. One of them is making somewhere between $70,000 and $80,000 a month from eCashflow today. All of the other ones, some of which are still involved with eCashflow, but everybody got their money back in the first year, and they continue to receive commissions today, everybody that bought a license. In 2005, I decided that buying a license wasn't really what I wanted people to do. I just wanted people to see the product, see the application, and realize that, wow, this is really good for the merchant. I need to present this, and hopefully I'll be able to build a portfolio of customers that'll give me a residual commission every month that I can live on, or at least add on to what I'm already making. So, trying to make it simple, trying to keep it simple for everybody. Jeremy has done a great job of putting together the website, and we're trying to finish our end of it, which is getting it to the proper colors and everything that fits you guys. But in the really, really big picture, I think you guys will love eCashflow because it's very simple to present. We get comments from people like, this is too good to be true. And, you know, people say that because they've never heard of it before. But they also say things like, well, you know, we should have been doing this 5 years ago. How come we didn't know about this? And then, of course, they're really glad that they get involved with us. And since what we do is we reduce their cost of collection, they stay with us, because to go back to do it the old way, it's going to cost them money. So the one key point of membership organizations and recurring billers are, many of them are concerned about cancellations, and our service recovers their declined payments and increases their retention of customers. How do we do that? We don't make any phone calls, and we don't write letters. We just get the money for our clients, and therefore, since there's no phone call to the NSF provider, they don't have an opportunity to cancel. They have to go out, they have to do their own calls if they want to cancel, and therefore we save the merchants even more money in retaining their customers beyond a collection call. We've been doing this a long time. We've got tons of experience. If you want to know who else does it, I really can't help you with that. But in the big picture, we've made it simple. We've made it easy. And we've got a bunch of people that do it full-time. We got a whole bunch of people that do it part-time. But it's one of those things that once you set a customer up, residual incomes come in every month, just like they do for credit card processing and other types of residual incomes. But they're more likely to stay with us for a much longer time than, you know, how credit card companies get thrown around by consumer or by merchants all the time. That doesn't happen in our business. Once they use us, they see how it works, and they see how much it saves them, and they love it. Okay, well, do you have any questions? I'm happy to answer questions for those of you that have some. And Jeremy, you want to open it up?
Yeah, absolutely. So if there's any questions, regarding what he said so far at this point, we can throw them out. You guys can ask them to Rod directly or put them in chat. And if nobody has any questions, I got a couple for you, Rod, or at least one. More of a request, really, I think. All right, we'll let some of those questions formulate a little bit more. I appreciate you explaining the company history. You know, it is amazing to me you guys have been around for so long, and there's been so many, you know, I don't say so many, but there have been other companies who have kind of tried to get into the industry and just didn't have near the success that you guys have had as far as making all form of payments possible to recover in such a way that you guys do it. And I'd like to talk a little bit more, I think, of the logistics or the technical side of how that works, not all the way down to the, you know, super fine details, but, you know, to kind of give an example, I know I'm not going to probably reference by name in this recording, so I don't know if that would be a problem or not. But I know that there is. You mentioned the YMCA, and I also know that there's a fairly large beverage company that you guys have worked with for a number of years. And I remember either you or Mitch a while ago kind of telling me how well that worked out for the distributors or delivery drivers, because they were having such a hard time collecting checks, and once they implemented this, it just did some really great things for that particular company. And I guess in general, if you wouldn't mind maybe telling that story, talking a little bit about it, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then also just for some folks who aren't super familiar with how that recovery, or not even the recovery, but the representments work, if you kind of take us through from, okay, a decline happens, and then what you guys are doing, and how, you know, the merchants get their money, just kind of the whole flow from decline to representment to successful recovery. I know you guys have a pretty high percentage of conversion when it comes to successfully recovering that money. So if maybe you might just want to talk a little bit about that for a few minutes, I think that would be very helpful for everybody on the phone.
Sure, I'd love to. We have a number of customers in the beverage industry, but they're not unlike, you know, a bunch of wholesalers in that industry. One of our guys in Ohio about 13 years ago made a call on a distributor in Columbus, Ohio, who was distributing mostly beverages and, you know, some other snack products and so forth. And when he called on him, he told him what we did, and the gal there was the general manager, and she said, yeah, we got about 30 items a month that we have to give to our truck drivers. We give the checks to our truck drivers and send them back out to collect the payments that bounce. And then they went on to tell our sales guy that, well, the problem is that the sales guys go out there when they're making a delivery, and they're supposed to get another check to replace the last one that bounced, and sometimes they forget to ask for it, and sometimes they lose the check, and it becomes a major turmoil for the company. So we explained how we did things and how the truck driver never has to see a check again if you use our service. And they tried us for 60 days. And at the end of 60 days, they called their corporate headquarters and said, everybody needs to use eCashflow for this. And we took on 147 warehouses across the country in every state because our product and service did exactly what we told her it would do, and our recovery rate was in the near 90% for them, and they never had to lose another check. They never had to be concerned whether a truck driver was going to ask for it or not. We cover them up in about 7 to 21 days. Now, how do we do it? Well, that's the question that everybody wants to know, and it isn't a secret, but we do use algorithms that we've developed over a long period of time. I'm going to say probably 8 to 10 years. It's a rolling thing that every year we update it. It's based on when is a good time to represent an item for payment. And over time, over history, we've collected tons of data that tell us what are the best dates, when should we send it out. And so we've increased our recovery rate from around 65% to 70 to 80 to 90%, depending on the industry, just based on the fact is we know when to represent the items. Our algorithms basically are set every month, so we know when the representment dates are going to be for the month, each month. And to my knowledge, nobody else was ever able to develop a scheme like ours that would yield a high rate of recovery. And that's the key to our success, is the high rate of recovery. Because merchants, when they do their own collections, you know, they're happy to get 50%. Some do better than that, and some do worse than that. But if you can give somebody the assurance that 70 to 80% of their returns will be recovered without any cost to them, that's something that they can sink their teeth into. And then, of course, if we can make the setup easy for them and take some work away from somebody there that you know, may be overloaded, you just never know for sure. Ideally, the client will give somebody the job of, okay, look, I want you to use eCashflow, work with them directly. Sometimes it's an IT person that may want us to pick up the items electronically from a SFTP site that we set up for them. Maybe they'll want to automate some other portion of the recovery program or the depositing program. You know, we do send deposits back, and when we do that, we send them a report listing all the items that we've recovered, and the total of all the payments in there is the same as the deposit into their account. So we always give them a very accurate accounting report and record of the deposits that we make and who they apply to. So we keep it simple, we keep it straightforward, and the success, you know, speaks for itself. Any other questions? Well, Jeremy, you've done a really good job in getting some people on the line here to hear about eCashflow, and maybe some of you have heard of this type of a product before. You know, I really can't say that I can tell you much about the competition that was out there over the years, only that we acquired some of them as they couldn't quite get over the hump. It was important to us to make sure that all their customers got paid, all of their commissions got paid. And by the way, you know, when we bought them, we bought their customer base, we bought their salespeople. We continue to pay salespeople, even though we've acquired them. That wasn't a requirement that we had to do, but I felt it's only fair. They've worked, they built the customer base. We always want to pay the commissions. More important to us to pay the salespeople than anybody. You guys do all the work, and you guys should make all the money, in my opinion. And so, any other questions?
I'm glad you brought up the money, because I'm sure I obviously already know the answer to this, and it's actually really exciting when it comes down to the commissions. And I'm surprised that so far nobody's asked, how do we make money? Where are we getting paid? You mentioned residuals, which is obviously attractive. People like that. Before I jump onto that, I'm going to, you know, just kind of leave you guys hanging just for a moment. My question, Rod, is obviously, you know, back in the late 90s and even some into the early 2000s, checks were still, physical checks were obviously still something relevant at the time. Now, these days, paper checks, not so much anymore. Now we're looking more at the ACH, which is the electronic check. But mostly these days, the credit and the debit cards are what most people are using for form of payments. And I know you guys have a number of gyms who use the software to collect, you know, their membership fees. And we actually have a number of different, I'm still working on this. I'm going to make some of this bold and stuff so it pops. But we have a number of different little presentations, or I should say eCashflow has given us a number of different presentations that can be used to help you guys with sales. And the reoccurring billing, I guess what I'm getting at here is the reoccurring billing. That can be a problem. Reoccurring billing, membership base, you know, gyms and all things like that. Merchants who have credit card or debit card numbers on file that they bill on a regular monthly basis. That can get really difficult sometimes to manage. And, you know, like you talked about, Rod, with the retention, well, I know this to be true definitely in the like gym industry, is if they have somebody who declines on their gym payment and they call and say, hey, your card expired, you know, can you get a new card on file? They're likely to receive a response something like this. Oh, well, you know what? I don't even really go that much anymore. Why don't we just go ahead and cancel it, right? So I know that plays a big part in the retention. But I was wondering if just before we jump into the commission part, which is really exciting, there's a lot of money to be made with this service. How dramatically would a business like a gym or somebody that has credit card and debit cards on file benefit from this? And if you can maybe give a couple of examples or rough ideas as far as percentages, I think that would be really beneficial for all of us to hear about the electronic payment and the debit and credit card industry specifically. Thank you, Troy. He said good question. So Rod, I'm going to pass it back to you. Okay, sure.
Yes, you're absolutely right. When we started with the YMCAs, there were only checks, believe it or not, in 1999. ACH, you know, it was coming, but it really didn't take off in the YMCAs till the early 2000s. And so that's when we decided, wow, we got to be able to recover those because they're going to be pushing people from checks over to ACH to make the payments automatic. And they did. And we followed suit with a recovery program for that. And then what we found out is that, you know, checks were bouncing at a rate of 1 to 3% were bouncing for the YMCAs. But once they got into ACHs, all of a sudden the declines of ACH payments was more like 4 to 7%. It was a lot more than the checks. So obviously, you know, we were helping them in even a bigger way with that problem in the early 2000s. And by 2010, they had switched over a lot more customers to debit and credit card processing for their recurring transactions. So we decided, well, we've got to offer a competitive product to do the same type of recovery over there. And we did, and we do today. In the beginning, though, it was not an easy transition. They actually had to convert to one of our processors in order for us to do the recovery. And I'm happy to say that we no longer require that we've created a gateway that the customer can use and keep their current processor. Everything remains the same, except we can now go to the gateway, our own gateway that their transactions are flowing through, and pick up the returns. Those declined items that come back, we can pick them up, load them into our software, do the recovery, and make the payments right back through the gateway. And by the way, we're using the same processor to do our representments that the merchant uses. So the processor actually gets additional transactions because when we're recovering the transactions, they go through as completed check or debit or credit card processes, and the merchant gets their money directly from the processor. So we don't actually handle anybody's money. We just do the recovery with the representments of the debit and credit card transactions right through our own gateway that's connected to the merchant and to the processor. Keeps it really simple, so much easier than it had been in the past. And everything basically is the same. Our representments are done using algorithms, and we're highly successful in that area, the same as we are for ACH. And you're right, checks have gone way down, but we still have a lot of check business, and I get amazed every week when somebody calls me up and said, we got a customer here that only accepts checks for payment. And, you know, besides the large distributor types that they accept checks simply because they're in a very competitive industry and they don't want to have any fees from credit card processing involved because it comes right off of their bottom line. So they don't want that. They've got to do checks because that's what everybody else does. And it keeps the cost down lower to their customer. So I hope is that a good answer for you, Jeremy?
That's a great, That's perfect. That's really what I wanted you to get into, and I'm glad that you mentioned the gateway, because if you didn't reference that, I was going to ask you to talk about that for a minute. Now, I want to pause for a moment and piggyback and emphasize on this gateway, because most of you guys know that I have a fairly long history or decent history in merchant processing. So when Rod had talked to me about that, my brain was going 100 miles a minute, because I was like, wait a minute. So if somebody already has a merchant account set up and they're getting declined debit and credit card transactions, are they going to have to switch their merchant account in order for you guys to be able to provide your service? And the answer was no. And I was like, that's awesome. Now, here's a couple of reasons why. One, some of you guys know that getting merchants to switch their merchant account isn't an easy task most of the time. If you have a good relationship with them, it can be very easy. They trust you. You know, when you have a relationship with somebody, it can go a lot smoother. Traditionally, though, if you're out trying to cold call or talk to somebody that you don't know very well about switching their merchant account, you're going to get a lot of resistance. Now, if you're able to go to them and say, hey, I have this great service that's going to automatically help you collect your failed debit and credit card transactions, you don't have to switch your merchant account, by the way, that's going to be an objection that you can take away from them, okay? Now, the gateway, that's really important, and some of you on the phone listening to this recording in the future may understand what a gateway is, but I'm just going to go brief on this for a minute. A gateway is basically an online portal where now if you go to like Amazon or somewhere that you can shop online, when you add things to your cart and you check out, what captures that transaction or captures that dollar amount is the gateway, okay? So what Rod is basically saying is they don't have to switch their merchant account. They just need to take their existing merchant account and tie it into their gateway and run their credit card transactions through that gateway, still through the same merchant account that they've been using for who knows how long. And now they have a really easy automated way to get all of those declined debit and credit card transactions. And it happens a lot, especially in the gyms. People who have cards on file of their customers, they're going to get declines. It's going to happen. I don't think there's any business out there that can say, yeah, I never have a decline or a debit or credit card decline ever if they're a recurring billing type of merchant, if they're rebillers. There's always going to be some level of decline. So that is huge. And now on the other hand, if we have clients or you have a client who has a merchant account that was set up through Agora, that's great too, because there needs to be no concern to you as a sales rep that, oh, well, in order for this service to work for them, they're going to have to switch over to a merchant account that eCashflow can set up for them. No, none of that. The gateway, the merchant account, the gateway is something new that they'll have to tie their existing merchant account to. There are a few steps there logistically for that to happen, but eCashflow has IT individuals who can help the merchant with that. It is a little bit of work, but it's not that much work for the result that they're going to get. Very little effort in comparison to the results that they're going to get. So I just want to take a moment and kind of talk about that, because it's really important for everybody to know that, because you're going to get that question. It's going to come up. Well, do I have to make changes? Do I have to do this? And the answer is no. Now, that is a good opportunity for you to open a conversation about looking, and having them change for, more efficient processing, different tools that will help them, or simply just lowering their fees. But it doesn't have to make or break the deal, is my point, which is great. Now, I want to get into the commissions, because I'm actually kind of surprised that nobody's asked about that so far, and I'm sure you guys are wondering. The commissions on this program are really, really good. Now, Rod had mentioned if you get a smaller merchant and they don't have that many declines per month, okay, maybe you won't see, as higher residual on those particular accounts. Let me see. We got a question. Not one. I don't know, Gene. Gene asked, why would a business not want to use eCashflow? I don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't want to. It's a really good service, and it just makes a lot of collections. So with a product like this, it's very much how our commission examples look. If you were to go take a look at our merchant accounts, there is no necessarily set commission. We can give you guys general ideas just based on some average numbers of what an account would look like as far as a residual commission is concerned. So there are a few different examples here, and it varies state by state. So the non-sufficient funds fee, there is a limit set per state, and it varies. I think, Rod, help me out here, but I think the average is about $25 nationwide, roughly, right?
Yeah, it is right. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go through and just look at a couple of the examples. A business that has roughly 50 declines in a given month from checks, ACH, credit cards, and debit cards. So the system can handle any of it. It doesn't have to just set it up to only do credit and debit. It'll recover any failed decline, or any decline payment that they have. Doesn't matter, physical check, electronic check, credit or debit card. Now, as Rod had already mentioned, they're somewhere in that 70 to 80% successful recover rate, which is really, really good. They have some great algorithms in place so they know what time of the month, to try to represent and all of that. So they do a great job when it comes to successfully recovering. So with that being said, we use 75%. That's somewhere between the 70 and 80%, so just 75. So if a business has 50 declines, let's just say, and eCashflow successfully recovers about 75% of those, that's going to be about 38 successful recovers in that given month. Now, with there being a $25 non-sufficient fund fee that's charged, and now I don't know that we went into too much detail, so I'm going to break just for a moment and put this out there. Rod had used an example of if somebody has a decline of $100, the merchant gets the full $100. But the person who declined, they're going to get charged $125. Okay, that $25 is a non-sufficient funds fee. And if any of you guys have ever joined a gym or ever looked at some of the fine print of any bills that you guys have, there's usually something there that says if you have a failed payment, we have the right to charge you, a non-sufficient funds fee. So it's not abnormal in any way for merchants to already have something like that in place. Now, whether that's because they're using eCashflow right now or not, I can't tell you. But I know in my personal experience, I do see a lot of that verbiage in, payment agreements that you would have with different business owners or different merchants. So anyways, back to the example. So they're going to collect $125 from the person who declined. $100 of that's going to go to the merchant because we're pretending that that's what the decline amount was. eCashflow keeps the $25. However, Agora gets, anybody who's got a calculator can calculate this out, that it's 40%. So Agora gets 40% of that $25 and or $10 per recovery in this example. So if there's 38 on business owner example 1 here, there would be $380 in commissionable value that goes into the comp plan. 45% of that as the advisor, and that's what we get as advisors, 45%, or $171 in that month. Now, the next month, that merchant may only have 40 declines, or maybe they have 60 declines. We never know how many declines that particular merchant's going to have, which is why we did a few different examples just to give you guys some sort of an idea of what the commissions look like and how substantial those can get. And that's one account. If you have one merchant who has got roughly 50 declines, and eCashflow is going to cover roughly 75% of that. That's $380 in commissionable value, $171 directly to you. And now, if you look at example 2, that's based off of 75 declines, still at that same 75%. So now we're talking roughly 56 successful recoveries, now making the CV value or the commissionable value $560, $252 to you as the advisor. We have another one where it's 100 declines, 75 are successfully collected. So you guys get the idea here. I don't necessarily need to go through every one, although there was only 3 and I pretty much just did. And what we also did here was just to also give you guys an example a merchant who is in a state where $30 is the max. So obviously, same kind of numbers that we're just looking at, but now we're using $12 per recovery is what goes into the Agora comp plan. So I hope all of that makes sense. If it doesn't, just take a little bit of time, look that over at your leisure, and I think it'll it should make sense if you just kind of look at it. What I want to do now is I want to jump over to the co-branded page that we have with eCashflow. Now, don't forget about the colors right now. Rod's team's working on that. One of the guys who was helping fell ill today, so this probably will get done tomorrow or the next day. For those of you that don't know, Agora used to have totally different colors. Okay, we used to do green and blue. Now it's blue and white and silver. So as I mentioned, eCashflow and Agora have had partnership for a little while, and this just didn't get updated. But nevertheless, wait, we got a question here. I'm going to pause this for a minute. Troy, why don't you go ahead and just go ahead and put your question up there to Rob.
Can you hear me?
Sure can, yeah.
Okay, cool. So Jeremy earlier gave an example of a gym, and a lot of the issues in a gym are probably going to be expired credit and debit cards. In that case, are you asking for a $25 fee in addition to their getting caught up with their dues, or is there another approach when it comes to that type of scenario?
So your question has to do with an expiration date has gone past, and that's why the transaction failed? Is that the question?
Right.
Okay. Well, here's the most important thing you need to know is we're not going to collect a fee from anybody if we're not successful in our recovery. Okay, so we're a performance-based company. When we're successful, we've earned our fee, and that's when we charge it. And so letting you know that if there's an expiration date that's gone by, we can, because we belong to a network, and you guys may belong to a network as well, Jeremy. You can tell me whether you do or not, but we can attempt to get that expiration date, the new one, the replacement one. We can even get the replacement card numbers for lost or stolen cards if their bank is in our network. We can go to the network and come back and actually get the replacement card number, the new expiration date, and all we do is forward it to the merchant securely. They can update in their system then and do a new origination. And hopefully that'll go through. There will be no fee at all if it goes through. Okay, so we try to be fair about it. We don't charge them fees just to charge fees. We try to get them the information back, and then when we give it back to them, they can update their system and resubmit the transaction, and hopefully it'll go through, and there's no fees required for that. If it fails, of course, then it falls back into a non-sufficient funds transaction that we will try to recover in our 7 to 21 day period. Because all this is going to happen pretty fast. You know how credit card transactions are instant. Well, we're going to go get that information, if we can, from the banks pretty quickly. By the next day, we're going to be sending a file back to the customer with the updated expiration dates and or replacement card numbers for lost or stolen cards. So it all happens pretty quick.
Thank you.
Yeah. Along those same lines, I think it's important that we maybe mention a couple of key things. We try to be really, really responsible, not just to our merchants, but also to the authorizers of the NSF accounts, whether it be debit or credit card, ACH, even a check. And we charge our fee separately. So if it's a $100 transaction, we collect that $100 and give it to the merchant. And once we've done that, we've earned our $25, and we're separately going to put that charge through same account so that we get our fee. And then when they get their statement and they see that there was this $25 fee on there, our name and our phone number is going to be on there. So they can call us about this fee, and if they ask for the fee back because they were unaware or they didn't know about it or whatever the reason is, we'll give it back to them, the whole fee, one time. We won't do it, if they're a chronic NSF authorizer, we're not going to do it every time they call, but we'll explain it to them, and we'll give them the feedback if they ask for it. And the reason we did that from day one is we're not out to cause issues and problems. Most people that have payments that bounce know that there are fees associated with getting that fixed. And that's all ours is. Ours is a fix for the problem so that the customer, the consumer, the person that bounced the payment, they don't have to be involved. It was taken care of. Sure, it cost them $25, but it was going to cost them something anyway to get it fixed. So we decided early on that we'd give the feedback if they asked for it. And guess what? We were a bit surprised to find out we get very few calls. Most people were just glad to have it taken care of. And we've even asked some of the ones that call us and said, oh, you took care of my payment? You got it repaid after it bounced? And we tell them yes. And they said, oh, I'm just glad to have that take place. So we've learned over time that most authorizers of bad accounts, they may or may not have meant to do it, and 90-some% of them probably didn't mean to have it happen. But when they did, they know that somebody has to go through the effort of fixing that. And so the fees go through, and few of them are returned, just so you know.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Rod, 'cause I remember you mentioned that to me in previous conversations, and I think that's really great, and it's really important. It's important for us, I think, just as people who have been on, all of us have been on the phone. I'm sure at some point in time, for one reason or another, we may have had a decline payment. And I like to hear, as a consumer, that it's not hardball. That's really important, and it's so important also for the merchant, because they're going to be also mindful of how that impacts their consumer and what could generate out of an NSF being collected. Are they going to get upset towards the merchant? So the fact that we can confidently say to the merchant and that, hey, if one of your customers is upset about the fact that we collected, on top of the 100 another 25, and they're upset, I want you to know, from eCashflow to merchant, or Agora up to merchant, that if your customer is unhappy, they call eCashflow, and eCashflow will gladly give that back to them, with no troubles, right? It's as Rod said, if they're a habitual abuser of the NSF, and all of that, that's another story. But if it happens once or twice, maybe even here and there, over the years, eCashflow is not going to, fight them over it. Give them back, make them happy. It's not, it's not, really not worth, I think, the headache for everybody at the end of the day.
Yep,
and I'm glad that you brought that up, Rod, that some people are just grateful you guys took care of it. They didn't have to go and now call the business owner and give their card over the phone and this and this and that. Now maybe some people would rather do that over $25, but like you said, I think a lot of people are just happy that it's one less thing they got to deal with. Okay, yeah, they paid a few bucks, but whatever. It was going to cost them time anyways. Time is money. So at some point, one way or another, it was going to cost them, some amount of money.
Now, I'd like to add one more thing, and that is that we're not a collection agency. You guys probably all know how collection agencies work, but we're not one of them, and therefore we follow the NACHA, National Automated Clearinghouse Association rules to the letter, and we also follow the Visa MasterCard rules, which, by the way, were created for us to be able to represent the items through the networks, if you will. So therefore, everything that we do is by rules of the governing bodies that take care of the transactions that we're working on and recovering for our clients. And one last thing. I mentioned we're not a collection agency, but we do have two partner collection agencies that we work with, and we give them enough business as an option your customers of eCashflow can use our collection agencies if we're not, once we've recovered our 70 or 80% and there's 20% left over, if they've been using a collection agency in the past, they can use our collection agency and we'll forward the information over to them and they will collect whatever they can collect, 100% hopefully, but whatever the collection agency collects, they will deposit the full amount in the merchant's account. They won't be taking 30% out or 40% out. They deposit a full 100%. And all the fees obviously will come from the bad authorizer of the account, the check writer, whoever it was. And as far as I know, the collection agencies that we work with, because we give them enough business, they're the only ones that do this, and they only do it for us as far as we know. So when you're talking to customers about collection agencies, if they use one, just remind them that if they use us, they're going to get 100% of the face amount of the declined payment if it goes to collections through us. So that's another.
Wow, I didn't even know that, Rod. I'm glad you brought that up. That's huge because I know collection agencies usually take what I'll refer to as their fair share, right?
Yes, exactly. Well, we generally don't get involved with it very much because, as a matter of fact, we don't even make it part of a presentation to customers unless we know that they're already using a collection agency, and then we know that they're paying for their collections. So we can throw this in as an add-on of, hey, look, ours is free. That kind of thing. So everything that we offer.
Oh, go ahead, Ron.
I was just going to say everything that we offer is free, including right through the collection agency, and 100% is paid to the merchant. So they should be thrilled knowing that everything that they allow us to do for them is at no cost, and we're going to give them the best performance that we can because we don't get paid unless we're successful.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just wanted to put out there that I think I'm glad that you referenced the relationship that you guys have with the collection agency or agencies. I think I heard you say that there's a couple of them you work with, and that's huge. And we're obviously not going to merchants, saying, hey, we're a collection agency. But if they bring it up or they ask, like, hey, we don't really have a collection agency, we do it in-house, or we have a collection agency and they charge us a whole lot of money, it's just good to know that that's a back pocket item we can discuss, and it just brings value to that conversation that we're having with them at that time.
Yep.
We're getting to the top of the hour here, so I want to kind of move it along here. Be respectful of everybody's time. I know there might be other engagements you guys have lined up on your schedules. So when you, from the marketplace, you click on Visit Special Offer Site, there's also a link in the Plans tab, and there's also a link in the Forms tab that gets you to this same URL. And again, this will be updated. I know this is old coloring. No big deal. The functionality of it remains. We're just doing kind of a cosmetic update here. So what you'll do is you'll take a client over, or you can just give the client this link. The first thing they're going to be asked to do is put in their name. Oops, I was trying to put test. I guess I was hitting the Y, not the T. As soon as they do their name and their company name, it'll take them over to this enrollment page, which also to this page we're going to be adding in, or eCashflow will be adding in for us, a couple of other form fields here that's going to say Agora sales rep first name and last name. So that is going to be a required field. That way eCashflow knows on their end that it was Troy as client, and then when they remit the commission information back to us each month, they'll be able to tell us it was Troy, and then we put it into the system. So that's important, and it will be required, so it has to be filled out. So if you're concerned that maybe your client you're talking to, for some reason, forgets your name or whatever, I can't really think of an example of why they wouldn't know that you're the rep if you're the one that introduced to them. But it's important, so if you guys feel more comfortable sitting there along with the merchant as they fill it out to make sure your name gets in there, it's not that big, and that wouldn't be that big of a deal. So this will get filled out. And what's also really nice, and another actually question or comment this reminds me of, is Rod, I do believe that the merchant does have kind of the final say of what their NSF charge will be. Now, what I'm saying is if they're in California, I believe that is $25. But if they say, no, I would rather only charge my client $15, they do have that say, right, to set what the amount's going to be that you'll collect?
They can. $15
okay.
is pretty much the minimum that we would get involved with. Just so everybody knows that, you know, we can't do it for a lot less than the $20. But 15 is the minimum that we could allow the merchant to say, that's all I want you to charge. And we could handle that.
Okay. All right, very good. And what's important about this list is that it tells you what the state allowed max is. So Alabama's 30, Alaska's 30, so on and so forth. I'm not going to name them all off, but if you're curious what your state's NSF fee is, you can come here and it'll tell you right there. And then that would most likely be the suggested to move forward with. You know, Virginia's 50. I think they're one of the higher ones.
Yeah, 50 is the highest.
Maybe. Yeah. 50 is the highest. So now if 50 is the highest in that particular state, you know, the merchant can say, you know, would maybe say 40, but as Rod already said, no less than 15, or then it kind of gets to a point where it's not really worth it for anybody if it's, you know, $5, right? You know, because we're making, you know, commission on that as well. So pretty straightforward sign-up process. I do believe there's probably a little bit more that needs to be done beyond this. If you have any questions or little hiccups along the way signing up, Rod's contact information is in our contact tab. He's very good about answering his phone, and if he doesn't right there immediately, he'll get back to you pretty quickly. His email address is also in here. So that's pretty much how that works. It's just an electronic enrollment, straightforward. Anything that you want to add to that, Rod? Sorry.
Only that when somebody signs up, we will be in contact with them from eCashflow. We will send them a welcome packet, which will give them some information, the customer service number, and thanking them for being part of the program, and basic information in a package that we'll send to them.
Great. That is also good to know that they'll get a nice little welcome package. Two other little things that I want to bring up really quick before we ask for any final questions, and then we will end the call from there, is I do know, Rod, in talking with you over time, that the merchants do need to have some sort of verbiage or signage, not only in their business, if it's a retail walk-in, or if it's a website, there does have to be the verbiage in there that that client can be charged up to, you know, $25 or whatever is in that state, or it would be illegal otherwise to collect it. So they do have to have that verbiage, and from what I understand, Rod, is that you guys will provide that verbiage to them in any sort of signage or something that they have to have physically posted in their place of business. Is that correct?
We do. We'll send them stickers if they're a retail location. We'll send them the language that they should put in their terms and conditions. Some people just type it on their invoice. You know, if their invoices are done automatically, they just put a little line at the bottom of the page that is the authorization that's required. But most people put it in a couple of different places just to make sure that it's out there and somebody can see it. It's not a requirement that they see it, but it is a requirement that it be there somewhere so that the customer could see it if they were reading their terms and conditions or their invoice or whatever it might be. And we'll supply that. It's only a couple sentences, and it's only about charging the fee that is allowed by state law. That's all it is, if their payment bounces.
Perfect.
Yep.
Just wanted to get that on this recording as well, in case that's a future question. And it's just good to know that you guys are providing, you know, the stickers or the signage and the verbiage, so they can just easily implement that into their business, their terms and conditions, policies, procedures, all of that. Troy, I think you had one other question, and it actually is a good question. So I'd like if you wouldn't mind, if you want to ask about that.
Yeah, I'm back. Is there a minimum requirement in amount of business? I mean, do you have like a cutoff, or like maybe a really small company that doesn't have a lot of charges, or?
Sure, a good question, but the answer is no, we really don't have a minimum. Remember that we started into business just picking up one check from one business at a time, and it still works. We handle them just like we would a large customer. You know, they'll go into the algorithms and they'll be presented when it's likely funds available. And I don't know that anybody wants to spend too much time if they know that the guy has only a really, really small account. But again, it's okay with us. It's not a problem.
All right, great. Thanks.
You bet. You bet.
Perfect. Good question, Shiraz. So I wanted you to put it out there verbally because that is a great question. In fact, I think I've asked Rod that before as well and got the same answer, that there is no minimum. They will provide their service to anybody, no matter the size, how small or how big. All right. So with that being said, are there any other final questions before we wrap up the call?
Well, I would just like to thank everyone for having me on the line today. Hopefully I've brought you up to date on what we consider to be a super service. Whenever you can sell something that doesn't cost anything for the end user, it's a big deal, in my opinion. And when it can save them money besides not costing them anything, it's, you know, how do you say no to that? Unfortunately, some people do. And then maybe later you can talk to them again and they'll have a better feel for it the next time around if they don't do it the first time. Most people never say no. They just don't kind of finish the deal. So you have to kind of follow through with them, make sure that they understand and they remember what you guys talked about, because they have a tendency of forgetting within a very short period of time because it's new. Never heard of anything like this before. So stay with them, be persistent, and they'll sign on and it'll start flowing. So thanks very much for your time. I sure do appreciate it. Everybody have a great afternoon.
Rod, we really appreciate your time as well. Thank you so much for spending about an hour with us on the phone, getting everybody caught up to speed. And some people listening to the recording may have never heard of eCashflow or any service like this before. So very grateful that you spent some time with us so we could learn more about you and the company. So I'm excited. And just thanks again, and thanks to all of you who spent the hour with us. And we will see you next week, same time, same place. Have a blessed day, everybody. Bye-bye.